Last year's national championship game, my tire last week on I-35, and TCU Colorado this Saturday. All things blowouts. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll, host of Locked On Big 12, alongside Kevin Borba, host of Locked On Buffs, Stephen Simcox, host of Locked On Horned Frogs. Guys, let's this whole TCU Colorado thing. Hey, first, thank you all for making our shows your first listen every single day. This whole TCU Colorado thing, Borba, I'll start with you. Looks like a blowout on paper. Deion said he's bringing his bags and they're Louis. I don't know if they were as Louis as they were supposed to be.
You know, I think they were as Louis as they could be when you try to bring in over 50 new players. I don't know if the transfer portal was as deep as he originally thought it would be, but I still think he made do and brought in some good guys. I talked about it on our crossover episode yesterday. We got SEC guys like Jordan Dominic, who had 7.5 sacks for Arkansas last season, a safety who started and was really good at Arkansas, Miles Slusher. They have Travis Hunter. So they got guys. I think everything he says is blown out of proportion in some aspect, and so I think that's kind of a case of that, and that's why this blowout is kind of being blown out of proportion, I guess you could say, like your tire on your road trip. But here's the thing. Am I allowed to use a transitive property on this show, Drake? Can I use a transitive property?
I took ideas in mathematics in college, never really mathematics, so you'll have to really walk me through it. Okay,
transitive property. My favorite property of them all. We talked about this yesterday, Steven, so you're going to have to hear the same thing again, but this is for the new listener. Last year, the biggest matchup that I think we saw between these two teams was Chandler Morris versus the Colorado defense that went 1-11, right? He struggled, okay? So theoretically, if this roster is better, Chandler Morris would struggle again. So I get the blowout stuff, but I also want to bring that point to the table. So that's just my little tidbit there.
Transitive property, the circle of suck. If somebody beats somebody in something, then it all kind of works out in the end. Stephen Simcox of Locked On Horned Frogs, does Colorado scare you?
No, but I will say this. Kevin brought a new argument to the table because for months, Colorado fans and Coach Prime stands have been telling me you can't, there's nothing you can take from last year's team, last season's game. This is basically an expansion team that Deion's bringing to Fort Worth Saturday. So if you base anything off that 1-11, team last year, you're being a fool. But Kevin is saying this defense that, obviously struggled last year for Colorado because they kind of held okay against Chandler Morris, that would give them a chance. I mean, I've really dug into this, Drake, this week. I've tried to go through all the names. Kevin laid out some, good players that are there. I know they have a couple transfers from South Florida. And Jimmy Horn Jr. and Xavier Weaver they like. There's talent here. He's definitely upgraded this roster. But I keep coming back to what's it going to look like when they hit the field? How are they going to have any continuity in game one of a brand new coaching staff, brand new team? And I honestly feel like that in some ways might be their biggest advantage. If you want to spin it and say, Sonny Dykes has talked about the challenge of, it's hard to prepare for this group. They don't really know what film to watch. They can't watch last year's Colorado team. They've watched some of Kent State to get a feel for Sean Lewis. They've watched some Alabama to get a feel for the defense. But there's a lot of unknown. As the game goes on, though, and the depth and the talent of TCU takes over, I just feel like this is going to be a lopsided affair. And maybe Colorado, throws the kitchen sink out there and hits some big plays. But ultimately, I just don't really see a path for them to keep this a competitive football game for 4 quarters.
Kevin, welcome to the Big 12. Colorado, Deion Sanders coming to the league next year. Welcome back to the Big 12. As we've completely forgotten that Colorado left this league high and dry now almost 15 years ago. Kevin, what does that add to this matchup from a Colorado standpoint, the fact that the Big 12 moniker is now tabbed on this game?
Yeah, I think for Colorado, the Big 12 offers promise. It offers a new potential and it offers new life. Realistically, let's call a spade. In the Pac-12, Colorado was the worst team. They accomplished literally nothing except for 1 year. They did make it to the Alamo Bowl during the COVID year, but we don't count that. They made it to the Pac-12 title game back in 2016, 2017, I believe. So they didn't accomplish much. They never really felt like when you go to a new school and you just don't make friends is what it kind of felt like. And then they ended up transferring back to their old school, a.k.a. the Big 12.
Are you saying it was the wrong decision to leave the Big 12?
At that time, we have to take off our Big 12 glasses, and we have to realize the Pac-12 was in a position to kind of be the richest and most prominent conference. Now, obviously, Larry Scott and Dr. K, George Kliavkoff, ran that into the ground. But at that time, they had the richest TV deal. They had the Pac-12 network, which was my first employer, shout out. But that was supposed to be a huge thing. They just mismanaged it. And so I think it was, in theory and in thinking that it was going to be ran correctly, a good decision. But obviously, there's a reason there's 4 teams left, and Colorado's back in the Big 12. I do think there's more excitement, and I think this could be a rivalry to kind of wrap this up.
A rivalry between Colorado and TCU. Stephen Simcox, what do you think about that? Is this where you introduce Colorado back to the Big 12?
I mean, I guess it could happen in theory. TCU has Baylor and Texas Tech that are the regional rivalries. They also have some history with Utah and BYU. But, I mean, they're going to take the field Saturday apparently wearing shades and with new helmets, Colorado that is, and a lot of swagger. So I think if this game gets out of hand, then we could see some tempers flare and some good energy from both teams in a hot stadium. So maybe there is a future rivalry here. I guess one big part of that, though, too, is, as both of you guys know, is Deion going to stick around, right? Like if this experiment goes well, is this just a springboard to SEC School X or his alma mater in Florida State, or is he in this for the long haul? But sure, there's all kinds of opportunities in the new Big 12. I'm excited Colorado's back. I think the league as a whole is more united than it's ever been. And they're ready to say bye to Texas and Oklahoma and turn over a new page and sort of form a new identity in a new world of college football. And Colorado can be a huge part of that. And if they're good, then that's good for the league. So I'm all for that, just not on Saturday afternoon.
Kevin, a lot of people have Colorado in that's at 3.5 wins. Yep. A lot of people are taking the under here. Yeah. What kind of is there disrespect, or is that just the way things are going to be?
I think it's Colorado. When you cover it, I think we're seeing it from every analyst. It's either they're going to be great or they're going to be terrible. There's no in between. Yeah. It's okay to be in the middle ground. Realistically, I think too many people have been scarred from that 1-11 season. We've talked about it already. There's about 9 guys from last season, maybe 10 from last season's roster on scholarship that are still there. So we kind of have to throw last year out the window. It feels impossible, but last year literally doesn't matter, except for my transitive property example earlier, just because it kind of coincides. But realistically, I think it's a little unfair. They do get to play Stanford. They do get, I believe they get Arizona and Arizona State, or they get one of them. Yeah. They get Washington State later in the year. And who knows? Maybe this team hits the ground running, or maybe they pick up momentum during the middle of the year. They have winnable games. But again, we hate the unknown, and I think that's what Colorado is. So it feels safe to go under.
Stephen, your team went to a national championship last year, the first Big 12 team to win a game in the college football playoff, and nobody cares. 7.5 over under total, right? It feels like everybody forgot already that TCU had such a great year with Max Duggan. Is 7-5? It is disrespectful. I'll say it, but it is disrespectful. Is that a low bar that TCU is going to waste or pass?
Yeah, I think it is for sure. I mean, Drake, we see coaches all the time that have to make up disrespect narratives. I don't remember which player it was, but Georgia, after that shellacking in the championship game last year, one of their guys was like, somebody picked us to go 5-7, and everyone collectively said, who was that? Who said that in their right mind? That was your coach Kirby Smart that told you that, and good for you guys for buying into it. But Sonny Dykes, I mean, I think he has legitimate ammunition here. The over-under, as you said, is 7.5. Most people are picking them to finish in the middle of the Big 12. Even in this game, I feel like pretty much everyone's picking TCU to win, but they're not talking a lot about TCU. They're mainly talking about Colorado, and I get it. It's a great storyline. There's, a lot that's exciting about that program, but they're not even the kind of the main story in Big Noon Kickoffs world, coming off a great season. But to answer your original question, yes. And you look at the schedule, especially early, after this game Saturday, Nicholls State, Houston, SMU, West Virginia, Iowa State, and then you start to hit the meat of the schedule of BYU, K-State, Tech, Baylor, Texas, etc. But honestly, I think through the first 6 or 7 games, they could have 6 or 7 wins. And then you're just talking about going 2-3, 1-4 down the stretch. Like, that's very manageable. So I would smash that over with a sledgehammer if I were, a person that was laying money down. I think it's really almost too easy. Anything can happen, but 7.5 wins is very, very obtainable for this team.
With a big game, I'd say the biggest game in the Big 12 this weekend between Colorado and TCU. Let's find out the keys for each team to win right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Game time. Well, look, it is game time this weekend. There are a lot of college football games going on in your area. I don't know where you live, but I can guarantee you that much. If you're in Provo, Utah, obviously you got games everywhere. If you're in Chicago, I was looking the other day. We have, I think it's the number 6 area of listeners for Locked On Big 12 internationally, Sierra Leone. I think the Game Time app even works there. Go to look, download the Game Time app right now, and you can access these tickets to college football, college events, concerts, any of that for cheap. Because what they do is we get right up to game time and the ticket prices go down. Flash deals, last minute tickets, easy to find, and you get a picture of your seat when you go in and you see it. Also, if you find somebody else with a better price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticket app in the country for a reason. Snag some tickets right now without the stress at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, this is where you download the app, code LOCKEDONCollege, $20 off your first purchase. If the purchase is $20, congrats. Free tickets. Terms do apply. Again, create an account to redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. All right. Keys to the game. Kevin, if Colorado is going to pull off a monumental 20-point upset, what's that key?
Yeah, they got a few keys. They need to limit the offense and they need to make Chandler Morris uncomfortable. I talked about it earlier. He struggled last season. Obviously, there's room for growth for him, obviously. You sit behind Max Duggan. You kind of experience the camaraderie of making it to the championship. That helps you, even if you don't play. You build off of that, but they need to make him uncomfortable. They need to protect Chandler Sanders. That offensive line is scary hours. I am very concerned. If Colorado loses by a lot, it's because their offensive line can't protect Shedeur. And then you need a little luck. A little luck never hurt nobody, right? Am I right? We love our lucky charms. We love
keys
our
to the game. Get lucky. I love it, Kevin. I love it.
I'm just saying, sometimes you need to win those. You got to get the fumble. You got to get the loose balls. You got to get a good bounce your way on an interception, whatever it may be. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to get a little lucky, especially when you have 50 new players playing together for the first time.
That was my mantra in high school. Sometimes I'm just trying to get lucky, man.
Retweet.
Key to the game. Stephen, for you, I have seen Chandler Morris with my own 2 eyes throw for 500 yards in a college football game. Is he the key to not just this game, but the whole season? And if not, what is?
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely is, right? Protecting the football is going to be a huge deal. Kevin discussed it there when he was talking about the keys for Colorado. But you want to play a clean football game. That can be a challenge in the first game of the season. No silly turnovers. Don't give up a special teams touchdown. Don't give this team an opportunity to build some confidence, get some hope, steal possessions, all the football 101 things that we love to discuss. But, yeah, Chandler's the key here. I mean, they built this offense apparently with him in mind. You know, it's going to be heavy RPO. They're going to run a lot of tempo. And I think this wide receivers group is pretty deep. They don't have a ton of returning production there, but they brought in a lot of guys they're excited about. JoJo Earl, John Paul Richardson, Dalen Wright in the transfer portal. And so spreading the ball around, finding ways to get those guys the ball in space. And this is not last season. Max, he had a good deep ball, and I think a lot of times there was, this mantra of screw it, QJ's down there somewhere. Let me just chuck this ball up in the air and let him go make a play. That's not going to be the recipe here with Chandler. I feel like it's going to be a lot more intermediate passing game, taking what the defense gives you, working quickly, moving the chains, and we'll see that on Saturday. And then running the football, got a couple new running backs in Monty Bailey and Trey Sanders. I think the trenches is where TCU has a big advantage, so I feel like that physicality is going to be a huge key for them to bring that and set the tone early in this game.
Kevin, obviously Travis Hunter is a name that everybody knows. Who's the name that nobody knows, that if they step up, Colorado wins?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, I think you need to look at. We'll go offense and defense. I'll give you one each.
Yep.
On offense, I think it's gonna be Xavier Weaver. We talked about him earlier, and I've been harping to Stephen about him, so that's why he's quite familiar as well. He left USF as one of their most accomplished receivers of all time. I think everybody's gonna be keyed in on Travis Hunter on the offensive side of the ball, but Xavier Weaver, he's a jump ball getter. Him and his tag team duo, Jimmy Horn, he's fastest guy probably in the country, or one of the fastest guys in the country. So Xavier Weaver, jump ball guy. I think Shadur's kind of latched onto him as well as Travis this offseason and guys he likes to throw to. So that's my offensive guy. And then defensive, I kind of mentioned him earlier, but Jordan Dominic, pass rusher from Arkansas, gets to the quarterback, 7.5 sacks for the Razorbacks last year. I think the key to success in college football is making quarterbacks uncomfortable and bringing quarterbacks down. It's one thing to pressure them, but as we know, it doesn't matter. Just about every quarterback can run. So you got to bring him down, and I think he's the guy that you need to know.
Chandler Morris has been a name that we've thrown it out a couple of times already here, Stephen, and it's not like the entire TCU roster is gone. All the production is gone, but who's that guy that we haven't heard of that steps up big to beat Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, I think people know of this guy, but he wasn't a huge factor in the passing game last year, and that's Jared Wiley, the tight end. Huge frame, stands at 6'7", and they mainly use him as an inline blocker last season. He's really physical, can do that well, but he can catch the football, and he knows what to do when he gets the ball in his hands. I think work in the middle of the field, using him in the red zone is going to be a huge factor of what they do. And he's the player on this team that you're replacing a lot of NFL production. I think he can really help his draft stock this season just with his size and physicality. If he can add that dimension to his game of being able to catch the football, work after the catch, that'll be huge for him. And that's the name I think you'll really know top of mind when you start talking about TCU this season as the season starts to unfold.
What would a win mean for these two programs? For Colorado, obviously, it'd be a massive upset. For TCU, maybe it's just another game. We discuss that next here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Stephen, if TCU wins a game where they're favored by 21 points against Deion Sanders, do you think this team wins goes to another national championship?
Whoa, take it easy there.
I mean, I think it would be hopefully a business-like victory that sort of just gives them some affirmation that they're on the right track more than anything else. Sonny Dykes has just talked about how he feels like this group actually has more of a chip on their shoulder than last year's team. Last year's team was kind of playing with house money. There weren't high expectations, and maybe there aren't this year as well from a national perspective. I think in-house there are, though, and I also just believe there's a lot of guys that want to prove, hey, that was not a flash in the pan. Obviously didn't put their best foot forward in the biggest game of the year. You know, they endured all the memes, all the ridicule from that national title game and everything that came with it. And so losing to Colorado would definitely ramp up the talk of what a fluky season that was. This team is not really, as good as we thought they were. Sonny Dykes can't continue to build on that. But a win would just be, hey, yeah, you took care of business. You did what you're supposed to do. And now you turn the page and kind of move into the next year.
Kevin, if Colorado wins this game, I'm going to say it for you. If Colorado wins this game, they'll be ranked higher than TCU is currently ranked in next week's poll. The hype around Deion Sanders, if he gets it done with 50-plus transfers against TCU, is going to blow up. What would a win mean for Colorado?
Drake, I have a counter question for you before we go. What does it mean when your girlfriend says nothing is wrong? It means everything, because something is just clearly wrong. Yes, 100%. And so if Colorado wins, it means everything. I've talked to recruiting experts. I've talked to recruits. They want to see Colorado succeed. Deion put together a top 25 class in about 5 minutes on the job. What do you think he's going to do if he takes down national powers, national brands like TCU, a ranked team? I think realistically, like you said, Colorado wins this game. They're going to jump into the top 25. Do they deserve it? We'll find out as the season goes on, but they're going to be ranked. They're going to trend more than they already do. I think you look at Twitter or whatever it's called now, Colorado's trending just about every day. They'll be trending even more. And if they lose, we're going to find out how Coach Prime, how this program handles adversity, because they're going to become a meme. And I think it's all like everybody's like, oh, it's fine. It's just a football game. But until the whole social media is clowning on you and kind of taking a, on your program, we don't really know what you're made of. And so it's
a dub, Kevin.
a lot of implications. Correct, a dump. That's what I was talking about. There's a lot of implications for this game. It means a lot for Colorado. They can't let it determine their season, but they need to like take advantage of the opportunity they have.
So, Stephen, what would a loss then mean for TCU? Because it sounds like for Colorado, it would just be, hey, we lost a game that we were supposed to lose by 3 touchdowns. What does a loss mean for the Horned Frogs?
Well, honestly, I mean, similar to what Kevin said, it would kind of be the first time that Sonny Dykes has experienced real adversity, right? Like, obviously, the national championship game was a bad loss, but that team still played over their heads and got to where they got to a place nobody thought they could. This would be gut check time. Okay, how do you turn the page now? There's some doubters. And I'll tell you one thing about the end of the Gary Patterson era. Those teams, like when they started going downhill, they would fold in the tent in a hurry. Like they had some losses to SMU in 2019 and 2021, and that really turned the table on their season, and they couldn't recover from that. And so we would see just sort of, okay, how do you respond now? And I think it would also just, as I said earlier, kind of reaffirm a lot of the negative ideas people had about TCU's season and how they follow up the program. So is it the end of the world, as Kevin said? No, but there's a lot you would have to kind of get through and sift through before you could get off the mat again and hopefully find a way to turn things around.
Kevin, apocalyptic scenario, Colorado wins this football game. This is a lot, obviously. I know you know that, but I need your objective. You're honest. And okay, add a little fan in too. How do these 4 quarters play out? Who wins the game?
I question Colorado's offensive line. I mentioned it earlier. I did a deep dive through their PFF grades, which for the people out there, I don't use analytics as to base my arguments, but I use it as a crush.
Neither does PFF, by the way, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, they have a whole database for it. You think they could try to use it. But realistically, their offensive linemen, they all graded mediocre at best. They have a couple good ones. Their second best lineman was just deemed ineligible, which I did this rant on our crossover. The NCAA cares about mental health, apparently. But he had to go transfer to a school where his mental health was free and taken care of, and he's not eligible. But the NCAA cares. Woo. Anyway, the offensive line. And that's my worry. Chandler Sanders can move, but realistically, how productive is a quarterback always on the run? So I think we'll have big plays. I don't think that's going to be out of the realm of possibility. They have too many athletes to not have big plays, but can they keep up with what TCU will probably be more stable, I guess you could say, with their offense? They're not going to be hucking it around like they did last year, like Stephen mentioned, but I think they're going to hit you with that steady and consistent. Slow and steady wins the race, which it's ironic to call Sonny Dykes' offense slow, but Sean Lewis's offense is faster. So it's going to be fast. It's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be highlights, but I think there's going to be some major stupid plays to say the least.
So Colorado loses.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a close one. I think they'd cover realistically. I have too many questions about TCU's offense and all the people they lost. Obviously, they brought in good people, but there's a lot of missing pieces or a lot of moving pieces. And so I think Colorado could keep it close. And even if you keep it close, I'm not a moral victories guy, but you kind of have to have something to build off of. So
sweet. All right, Stephen Simcox, you just won a close game in Borba's book. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
Well, I mean, I think TCU comes out, and Kevin talked about the offense. Funny story real quick. Chandler Morris was on 3 podcast recently, and he said his dad, Chad Morris, and Drake, I'm sorry, I know you have some Arkansas roots, and that name might make you bristle a little bit.
That guy's the worst.
Yeah. Well, he was there at practice, and he was apparently asking Chandler, was like, how do you guys line up so fast? So if Chad Morris is impressed with the speed of your offense, I think both these teams are going to go fast, and the game might end in 3 hours because it's a stupid clock rule now that the clock doesn't stop after first downs, but both these teams are going to try to maximize and give as many plays as possible. But TCU, if they get it done, I feel like, as I said earlier, they played a clean game. They kind of imposed their will, especially in the running game. They churned out yards on the ground. They limited Colorado's possessions, and they took advantage of an O-line that's in flux and got to the quarterback and made plays. I can see a game where it's close in the first half, for the first few quarters, as the teams are kind of feeling each other out. But I just think ultimately the depth of this team that TCU has is going to take over. Frogs win, Frogs cover. Deion is mad in the press conference afterwards, and we continue to march right along into the season.
Deion quits his job, goes somewhere else. Yeah, has a tirade. Guys, thanks for joining the show today. Kevin, welcome to the Big 12. Welcome back to the Big 12.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here. I'm glad to be along this journey. I'm glad to watch football so people can stop asking me how good this team with 50 new players is.
It's back. Stephen, thank you for going to a national championship. We will full stop it right there. You guys made the game.
That's right, and nothing else happened. Actually, I think the season ended after the Michigan game. That was how it was in my personal record.
They accidentally canceled the national championship because of weather.
Hate to see it.
Yeah. Guys, thanks again for joining Kevin Borba. Go follow him, Locked On Buffs. That is TCU, Locked On Horned Frogs, Stephen Simcox. Saturday, football. It's all back tomorrow. This has been It Always Will Be. Come back on Monday. We'll recap the whole weekend on Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Doce Grande.